From Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA, and the home of hot chicken, it's the Rick Altizer Show. Sit back, buckle up. Rick will talk with the movers, shakers, and creators who put Christ in Christian entertainment. He's a man who's clear so the world can hear. Here's Rick Altizer.
Thank you for joining me today. It's on the Rick Altizer Show. It is part 2 of my interview with Andy Erwin. Andy, thanks for being back on the show.
Yeah, Rick, it's a pleasure, man. Talking to another filmmaker is so much fun that I would let's do some more of this. So let's go for part 2.
We had a great interview last time, and it went so well we decided to do another one. And Andy, thanks for giving me a little bit more of your time. And, if you missed that show, you can go to my website, rickaltizer.com, and you can go see that, listen to it there. I've got almost about 100 shows on. So, there's lots to see. We've got the Kendrick brothers, Sam Sorbo, Kevin Sorbo, Shonda Pierce. It just goes on, and Russ Taff, and everybody's on there. So anyway, and now Andy Erwin's on there. So way to go, Andy.
I made it. I finally made it.
And he's directed a Hobbit. I love it.
Yeah, I used to tell Sean Astin on both. On Mom's Night Out, he made the whole crew honorary Goonies. And then on Woodlawn, I used to tell him that he has to tell me once a day, I can't carry the ring, Mr. Frodo, but I can carry you up Mount Doom. So,
Oh, man, that's one of the fun parts of being you, getting to direct these amazing actors. We talked last week, some of the actors you've directed, Academy Award-winning Jon Voight, Sean Astin from, Samwise Gamgee, from Lord of the Rings. And in this movie we're talking about today, again, I Can Only Imagine, coming out in theaters March 16th, 2018, you directed Dennis Quaid. And so just an amazing repertoire of people you've talked to. And so we talked about the movie a little bit, about getting into that. Talk to me, if we can, getting back to I Can Only Imagine. It's about, why don't you go ahead for the people who maybe might have missed last week. Can you just give me a little update on what I Can Only Imagine's about?
Yeah, I Can Only Imagine is the story of the song you know, but the story behind it you may not know. And it's the beloved song, most played Christian song of all time. And probably the most well-known one, second only to Amazing Grace. And, it tells the true story of the inspiration for that song coming from a broken father-son relationship, abusive father that Bart Miller, that wrote the song and with the band Mercy Me, Bart says that his dad was a monster, and he watched God transform his dad from the monster to the man he'd always hoped he'd be, his best friend. And if the gospel can change that dude, the gospel can change anybody. And so when his dad passed away of cancer, somebody at the funeral said, I can only imagine what your dad's seeing in heaven right now, Bart. And that phrase stuck with him and then became the inspiration for his whole music career. And so it's an amazing story behind the music genre we love of Christian music in the CCM world. I get to bring Amy Grant, Michael W. Smith to life in a fiction, the actors that played them really brought them away in a really realistic way. And seeing Bart's story brought to life is really special. So it's a cool story. And Dennis Quaid plays the father. Trace Adkins plays the band's manager, and then Cloris Leachman, the both comedy and drama legend, plays the grandmother. So it's a special film.
Yeah, it's so great to see her in this as well. Just an amazing cast. The directing was fantastic. We talked about last week about how you're raising the bar on Christian films. And I think this continues that progression. I Can Only Imagine is just a wonderful movie. And the actress you had to portray Amy Grant, you think, because Amy's still around, and Amy's still here, and she's still young, and so you the first thought is they're going to have somebody play Amy Grant. Oh, is it going to be Amy? No, it's not. It's an actress. Oh, is this going to be cheesy? And you know what? It's not. It's like the great thing about your movies, which we talked about last week, is that you don't have any of that cheese factor. You don't have the cringe. Sometimes you see something and you cringe in certain films, and we don't have that with any of your stuff. And I just think that's because of your guys' vision, your focus. And can we talk then a little bit about that, the philosophy of that, okay, you guys are obviously intentional about, we don't want cheese factor. You worked hard to not have that.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that and where you see faith movies going?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think first of all, Rick, what I'll say is I'm proud to be part of the faith genre. I don't think it's just me and John that are doing quality work. I think there are a lot of individuals that are really raising the bar, and I think we're all spurring each other on to strive for quality, because I think Jesus deserves it, and I think the message of the stories that we choose to tell deserve quality. But I think as Christians and as the church, and I think that the church led the world in the arts for almost 2,000 years, and then in the past 100 years, for whatever reason, we abdicated and we kind of stopped, and we stepped out of our seat at the table. And I think as a result, a lot of the modern art and especially film passed us by. So I think we had a lot of ground to catch up with. So I think there were certain brave individuals that stepped off the sidelines and said, we want to do movies, when that sounded like a crazy idea. And so they had to figure out the craft of filmmaking. And so I think, any struggles with clunkiness along the way was just from the standpoint of us people inventing a genre that didn't exist. And so I think those guys and girls that did that are brave. They're very brave. And I think we're here as a tribute to what we're standing on their shoulders. And so I think that trend continues, that we continue to take the next step forward. So there's a lot of great filmmakers out there, like the Kendricks really set the bar to start with, and they have continued to raise the bar with War Room, and Mel Gibson and what he did with Hacksaw with Randall Wallace, and Randall with Heaven is for Real, Devon Franklin with Miracles from Heaven, John Gunn with Case for Christ, and hopefully our work contributes to that as well. And I think our desire is that quality is something that you strive for, not something you ever attain. So I hope that we continue to get better and better and better to really legitimize the genre. And what we found is that Hollywood is not as biased against Christians as we would like to think. I think they're a business, and they're motivated by success and by if they can make money at it. But if you can make money at it for them, they'll let you have as big a platform as you want. And I think you look at other genres that were considered to be a joke for a long time, whether that's horror or whether that is superhero films. And you look at, number one, they finally started proving that you can make money at it, so then they get more and more opportunities. And then those films begin to preach their platform, like what, Get Out, a horror movie that ended up delving into racism and different things like that. And I think you see them find their voice. I think within the faith genre, we've proven that they're really profitable, and now we're finally finding our voice where we have something to say. And I think God is really expanding those borders, and my hope is that generations coming behind us take it to the next level, because that's really what I'd like to see the Lord do.
You're listening to the Rick Altizer Show on Bot Radio, and my guest today is filmmaker Andy Erwin, together with his brother Jon. They have made the new movie, I Can Only Imagine, going to be in theaters March 16th, 2018, nationwide, be at a theater near you. And I saw the movie a few months ago and just fell in love with it. It's a wonderful film. I highly, highly recommend it. So getting back to, I thought, getting back to what we were talking about, I thought The Passion of the Christ, when Mel Gibson made that, I thought that was a game changer for the Christian movie industry, because it showed nobody would distribute it. No one even wanted it.
Yeah.
And he had to go distribute it himself. No one wanted to put it in theaters. And I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars it made. I don't even know the number, but it's staggering how much money it made. And I think it showed Hollywood, wow, there's a market here we didn't even know about. We didn't even think it existed. And so at that point, you started seeing Sony and a lot of these other major companies say, well, let's go make us a Christian movie, and I've seen some of the Christian movies do well, and then I've seen some of them let's do one, but let's take out all the Jesus and let's make it for everybody. And invariably, those movies tank.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, because my thought on this is I think the Christian market can spot a fake a mile away. They know when, okay, they're just making a Christian movie so they can, get a movie out, or this actor can get a movie. Can you talk a little bit about that, about the integrity of the people making the film all the way through the film, and why that seems to be related to the success of the film?
Yeah, I feel like the audience is smart enough to tell when you're asking them to go on a journey emotionally that you're not willing to go on as a filmmaker. So if you're just doing color by numbers to try to tell a Christian story, they can tell that. So it's, John and I don't do a movie unless we can believe it to every fiber of our being that this is what we believe. And so I can only imagine definitely represents that. It's a story of redemption, a story of grace. It's entertaining. Bart is hysterical. It's a story of a world we know well. And so hopefully every part of it rings as true and honest. And that's what I try to encourage young filmmakers that I talk with. I talked to a group of filmmakers the other day, and they were asking me those questions. And the term came up of authenticity. And I said, well, I feel like that's a very misunderstood word. I totally agree. From authenticity of embracing the fact that every story preaches, no matter if it's Christian or not, it always has the worldview of the screenwriter. So if that's the case, embracing who you are, not apologizing for it, embracing your Christianity, and go out and find a story that represents that in a way that really attracts you as a film audience member that you really want to watch. And then I guarantee you that when you find that kind of story, it will have the message that you're looking for. Don't just try to go find a message that's marketable. Find a story you love. And then it will ring authentically true. If you look at, the Kendrick brothers, they do movies that are very much authentically them. If you know the Kendricks, every part of that movie is authentically them. Our movies might be a little bit different. We tell true stories, and we maybe go a little bit of a different direction in that, but the message and the story itself remains authentically true. I think authenticity from the standpoint of chasing acceptance by watering down your Christianity, you end up dying in no man's land. And we call it dying in the chasm. And so we really feel like the tentpoles of Christianity, when represented well, with a quality story, do appeal beyond just our base audience. It's a very mainstream thing, but we don't have to forsake our audience to go get that. I think by embracing our audience, it opens up the doors to broaden out beyond it. And that's our hope, because I think that's where the gospel's needed.
We talked last interview about the music industry in the 80s, how it's kind of paralleling the film industry today. And you look at these career artists, you look at Amy Grant, you look at Michael W. Smith and Stephen Curtis Chapman, talented, entertaining, but they're not all about just entertainment. They were unique, but they were sincere, they were real, they were vulnerable, kind of like with Bart Miller, who this movie is about. I can only imagine. And that seems to be a career artist. Whereas the ones who seem to be just following a trend, or I'm just an entertainer, they don't seem to connect with the market as well. In the music industry, you saw that with those career artists. They knew how to connect with an audience. And so as a filmmaker, I think that's as important, especially now that we're looking at this transition, now that the secular community is influxing money into Christian films, because they know, like you said, there's profit, so they're going to do it. So but it's still about that authenticity, that connection with an audience. So then, can we connect over then now to editing? Because making that connection with somebody watching your film, there has to be an emotional talk to me about how the importance of editing is in that. First, we talked about last week about the acting, how important it is to get the right kind of performance from your actor. But then once all that's on film, telling that story is so important in the editing room. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's two kind of filmmakers. There are those that are painters, that they go out with a very specific vision in their head and they execute it exactly according to plan, and then that's the film that ends up. And I think when that works well, it's amazing, and then when it doesn't, it's a big disappointment. Then there's filmmakers that are what I call sculptors, that they know that they have a great story, but they have to keep chiseling away to find the story until nothing's left but the statue that they want. And I think John and I more fall into that sculptor category. So I think we always find our movie in the edit, and that's where we kind of sit down and figure out, okay, what have we got? And I think the reason for that is I don't consider ourselves artists. I consider ourselves craftsmen. That we build a craft, an experience for an audience, and we really value what that audience needs to have an entertaining experience, to have a uplifting, redemptive experience, and ultimately to get the gospel out. And so we really consider what does the audience need that's sitting in the chairs. And so we do a lot of test screenings and different things like that to figure out if you get one note that something's wrong, then it's probably somebody's opinion. If you get 10 of the same note that something's not working, then something's wrong with your movie. And so we work really hard to try to make the experience of an Erwin Brothers film as good as possible. And, with Imagine, we really sweated it. And so Brent McCorkle, my editing partner, really, he and I worked really hard to try to make that possible. Jon was very helpful. And I think that the story, when you make these little changes to the edit, can go from something that's decent to something that's special. And on this one, it was the case. It was really cool to see the story come to life. And then we started doing the screenings of the movie, and to see the audience reaction to I Can Only Imagine when it was done, and to see how they registered with Bart's story, because that song is so personal that everybody has their own story of I Can Only Imagine, of what the song meant to them, the rush of hope that it was in their life, that to connect the dots with what happened in Bart's life to lead him to write the song, it's like it completes the rest of their journey. And so it's a deeply personal experience when somebody watches the movie, and I think a lot of that has to do with that coming together in the edit.
You're listening to the Rick Altizer Show on Bot Radio, and my guest today is filmmaker Andy Erwin, together with his brother Jon, has made a movie called I Can Only Imagine, based on the song and the life of Bart Millard from the band Mercy Me, and it's going to be in theaters March 16th, 2018, theaters nationwide, and it's going to be at a theater near you. And I saw it. Now, I saw it in the fall at ICVM, which, again, just loved it. For my listeners, I recommend this movie. I recommend you see it. How would the editing have changed? How long were you editing up to distribution?
Yeah, we're Frank Capra said that cut your movie down until you can't cut any more out of your movie, and then cut 5 more minutes. And, you want it to be as concise as possible and still get the point across. And so since you saw it, probably lost another 5-10 minutes out of the movie, and really kind of just put it on a diet and really kind of honed it down to its essence. So it really moves, and it's a very enjoyable experience. There's not any parts where I feel like it drags. And then sound design is really where it kind of puts it over the top. So my sound designer, Matt Waters, that's done 3 of my movies, is an Emmy-winning sound designer, and really brought it to life. And I think hearing the final mix of a movie is always just kind of a sacred moment for a filmmaker, when you get to sit on this big sound stage and let them play the movie all the way through for the first time with everything assembled. It's a pretty special, spectacular moment. It's one where you just pinch yourself. So on this one, we were on the Sony lot, and we were in the Anthony Quinn soundstage, and sat down and watched it, and it was just chills, man. It was just chills. So people are in for a special experience. I'm privileged just to be a part of this movie. It was a team effort, and Bart's story is a powerful one.
Oh, it is. It's just a great movie. Back to editing. You see, you might have taken 5 to 10 minutes out. Give me some specifics of, like, do you struggle with, I love this part, and we spent so much time and effort, and this is a really expensive scene to shoot, and and you end up cutting out, oh my gosh, there's $50,000 right there in that scene. Yep. How do you navigate all that stuff?
It's brutal. We kind of have a policy that at the end of the day, it's not about what we want as artists. It's about what the audience needs to have a good experience. And so it's about those people in the seats. That's who we make the movie for. And we want it to be entertaining. And so I don't care how much it costs. I don't care how much I love doing it. I don't care how much on the set I thought this scene was really going to work. If it's not working in the edit and it's not working with the audience, we cut it. We're really brutal like that. And you just kind of have to, sometimes it feels like you're cutting your own arm off. But there was one scene that we did that We spent 3 days on it. It was a scene where the band traveled on this broken down bus that they had kind of jerry rigged together to travel in as their tour bus. Didn't have air conditioning, had plywood floors. And there's a scene early on where we meet all the characters on the bus, and Nathan one of the guitarists is asleep, and they knock over one of his candles, and the bus catches on fire, and they're trying to get the fire out. And it's this really comical, charming scene. And it was a really great scene to film. It was a lot of fun. We were all laughing hysterically on set, thought it was going to be great. But when we got the edit, it really kind of felt like it belonged in a different movie. It just didn't really fit. So we cut it. And so, but the cool thing is people that really love that kind of stuff, all those make great extra features on a DVD. So when the DVD comes out, you want to see the scene, it'll be on the DVD.
There it is. A lot of good extra features. It's, there's a reason now to buy the DVD to see all the stuff that's been cut.
Exactly.
So talk to me then about, okay, we got Dennis Quaid. Okay, I've got this amazing actor, which just recently we're seeing actors of this caliber in Christian movies. So just the fact that you've got Dennis Quaid, that's like, we've got Dennis Quaid. Can you believe, and he's got a major role. Yep. So how do you cut him?
The cool thing about Quaid, and this is very rare, because I had a scene in Woodlawn that I had to cut with Jon Voight that Jon Voight actually wrote for himself with us of when he first meets the USC coach, John McKay, at the airport. And it was a big, expensive scene. And it was a beautiful scene, but we needed to save some time and I had to cut it. And that one was brutal because, Oscar-winning actor, and I've got to cut it loose, but we had to move on. In this one, I had the fortune in this one that I don't think I cut one scene that Dennis Quaid did. Everything that we shot with Arthur was just better than we could have imagined, and no pun intended. And it was pretty amazing. I would say on that too, seeing it, it's not about the movie isn't about a song. No,
the movie is about Bart's relationship with his dad.
Right.
And so I see why it's so important to keep him in, because that's the story.
Yeah.
Yes, he wrote this great song. Yes, it became a big hit. Yes, he became had success and everybody knows the song, but that isn't the story. That's that. Yeah. You could have made that movie and exalted the song, but you decided to make it about a relationship. And that's why I can see why you wouldn't cut him out. He was so amazing, and he did a great job, and obviously you directing him did a great job there. So, but yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, it was, the movie in its essence boils down to the acceptance of a father. And I think as men, we all crave to be validated by our father figure, by our dad, and to say, hey, I'm proud of you. And so to see the gospel make the impact on his dad's life that brings him to that moment, and how it all dovetails in the moment, the way it goes, I won't kind of give that away, but it's a powerful moment for men. Like, they watch the movie and it's like, ugly crying, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I don't think since Field of Dreams, I have guys cried so much over that moment with a father. So at least, I just really proud of how it's registering with men. And
I share on I've shared on my show before. I think people have a piece of glass, and on that glass is etched a picture of their earthly father.
Yeah,
and they hold that glass up and they look to God through that piece of glass. And our life's work is erasing that image of our earthly father so that we can see who God really is. And I think this movie is such a beautiful metaphor in that, and it kind of shows that on how Bart had to struggle with the vision of his earthly father and how he looked at God. And you just really captured it. You did a great job on it. I just loved it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I think it has a lot to do with Bart being vulnerable with how he feels about his story, and John and Brent writing a script that reflected that. And I think that, I feel that it offers a lot of hope to fathers. It offers a lot of hope to sons. I don't think that there's any relationship that is too broken for the Lord. Anybody that's gone through abuse, I think God is in the redemption business. Bart said he never thought this could happen to his father, and it was just amazing to see God did that. And and then on the other side, I think for fathers, there's a lot of fathers that feel like, hey, I've screwed up too much, and that there's just no hope for me. I can't redeem this because I've messed it up too bad. And Arthur was a character that couldn't have screwed up his life anymore. He was like the thief on the cross. It was just in the twilight of his life where he was able to turn to Christ and say, I want that. And in the process, God completely redeemed his relationship with his son, and led to the inspiration for the song that we all love, and I think is already in heaven getting rewards for the people that have been ministered to by that song and hopefully by the movie. And it's just a treat to see God's grace on display, and it really gives hope to people that have really screwed up. And
you can see that movie, I Can Only Imagine, in theaters March 16th, 2018, in a theater near you. Andy, we're out of time again.
Man, this has been a blast. I've really enjoyed
it.
Hopefully we got a lot of good information out there, and then we'll have to have a part 3 when we do another movie.
I love it. Andy, thank you so much for taking time and being on the show today.
All right, Rick.